Hi, everybody. It's me, Karen Holton, with a censorship warning. YouTube requires that we indicate that some opinions in this video may contradict the consensus medical opinion about COVID-19. So please don't believe everything you hear. Do your own independent research to find out what fits with you. And welcome to the show. Welcome to Convergence. My name is Karen Holton, and this is my very first show on People for People Radio. And I want to start by thanking you, the viewers, for showing up and for giving me some time in your lives today. And I also want to thank Gaz and Vanessa for hosting me on People for People Radio. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today. I thought I would start off, since you basically probably don't know much about me, by reading my host blog. It's fairly short. And then I'm going to get a bit into my history and how I ended up in the position that I'm in today to speak to you about this whole concept of convergence. So basically, the personal is very political as we explore the politics here on Earth, the exopolitics of our galaxy, and the dimensions beyond through my unique perspective. Join me for discussions about how social justice activism, ET activism, and spiritual transformation converge to bring in the new positive timeline. Convergence is found at the intersecting points of our everyday life, the global awakening, and the intergalactic integration that we're experiencing today. This gives birth to our personal spiritual transformation, which requires us to consider the roles of health and well-being, our own inner guru, and strong connections to our higher self, our spirit guides, and members of the intergalactic communities. My goal is not to convince anyone about my truth, but rather to educate those who are interested and inspire others who may have had similar experiences. With all of the exopolitical contact that we hear about today, it's important for you to know that I am not part of any Earth-based group, politic, religion, or philosophy, and I'm not part of the secret space program. Further, I'm not tied to any one specific off-world group or race, and I'm certainly not their representative. I simply volunteer and make myself available to help out as needed by various groups and beings from many interdimensional realities. I guess if you want to boil it all down, basically I just work for Holy Spirit, which is also known as universal consciousness. In order to take part in full interdimensional contact, I believe that our health, psychology, and spirituality must be upskilled and evolved. And to assist with this process, I have found an abundance of spiritual help and guidance available through the ET realms, which overlap with the interdimensional, the ultradimensional, and the angelic realms, and all operate within the love harmonic of the omniverse. So in the upcoming months, I hope to include discussions, predictions, and timelines from both the Canadian and the USA perspectives. You'll get a chance to meet some of the most brilliant, outside-of-the-box thinkers and experiencers. Explore the many positive reactions and solutions to our perceived restrictions here on Earth, and contemplate how convergence is manifesting in our everyday lives. And so that's my host blog. And now I want to just sort of go a little bit into my history and how I came to this point of convergence. So my story is actually not that unique. It is unique from a mainstream perspective, but certainly not from the alternative perspective. And things started out for me, and I'm not going to get too much into what happened, but I ended up with some impairments. And those impairments put me in a low income category. Now, there's low income people all over the world, and a lot of what I'm going to say today might resonate with you regardless of where you live or who your people are or what your present state of understanding is. But to be grouped into a low income classification puts you at a very interesting perspective to see how things are going from kind of from the bottom up rather from the top down. And while I was low income, I found that on a political perspective, there was always social workers in the community to help people out. And now I'm speaking about prior to the year 2000. There was social workers, so people like myself could go and see a social worker and could explain what was going on and verify our information. And the social worker then would draw on all the community supports that used to be available. And so if people needed some counseling for mental health or addiction issues, they were able to get that. If they needed some help paying the rent, there was chances they could get that. If they needed specific medical care or different devices to help with disability or impairment, there was that also available. But all of that has been removed from the Canadian context since just before about the year 2000, and everything changed. And excuse me. And so, although had some support within the community, I found that I could no longer tolerate the religion that I was a part of. And I'm not going to get into why. Let's just leave it at that, I felt it wasn't serving me to my highest interests, and especially not spiritually. When I left religion, I was shunned and I completely lost all my community. So when I became a member of that religion, I had to give up everybody who was outside of the religion. And after about 20 years, all my supports, everybody that I had as friends and the people I loved, and everybody was just gone in an instant when I stepped out of that situation. And I was quite alone. And I had, I guess, a really big adjustment to make to all of that. And my life became quite scary and a little unstable. And I ended up with some depression issues and some anxiety issues. Who wouldn't? And around the same time, the father of my children, we had been divorced for quite a while, and he had a new wife. They wanted their chance at raising my two children. And I thought that probably now was a good time to give them a chance to do that. The problem was when my children went to live with their, excuse me, with their father and his wife, I didn't realize how absolutely horrible I was going to feel. I was only thinking of them and their best interests. And after they were gone and my former husband basically made it impossible for me to see them, I got extremely depressed and I was in a very deep state of grieving. Now that, and also the loss of my community and some health issues and everything else, led me to be in what I'm going to call a low vibrational state of living. While I was in that state, I picked up the imprint of someone who had lived in the same house previous to me moving in there. And I didn't realize it at the time what was happening, but I became overwhelmed with a huge, overwhelming sense of wanting to kill myself and to do it in a very odd and specific way. And I was just completely overcome with this urge. I just really wanted to die. Well, now in retrospect, I don't think I really did want to die. I just didn't want to feel so terrible. So I was in a very, very low vibrational state, and I hadn't come to accept my psychic gifts and my paranormal experiences at that point because I had been in religion and that had controlled what I believed and what I was willing to accept in my life. So long story short, I was actually planning to off myself, and I had the most incredible experience. It was at night, I was lying in my bed, and the next day I was going to do it. And all of a sudden, I had a vision. And this vision, I call it an explosive vision because it was so vivid and it was so real. And I saw all these points of light and in the darkness. And the light would shine out from each particular point in such a way that they appeared to have wings. And they spoke to me in one voice that sounded like 1,000 voices all at once. And they said to me, Karen, are you sure you want to do this? Because we actually do provide exit points throughout people's lives. And it's not a bad thing or even a sin to want to leave life if it's really unbearable. But if I wanted to stay, they would give me a gift. And I was just so overwhelmed by the experience. I couldn't think of what I wanted or how I wanted to even react to this experience. But I was very grateful because it shook me up to confirm that there are so many paranormal experiences that we're taught to shun or to not consider. And I think actually they are a very important part of every one of us. And this experience certainly taught me that I had value. I had value to somebody. I had value to angels. And it just really shocked me back into a higher vibrational state. Now, I just want to interject here that a couple of years later, I met a woman and we became friends. And when she found out where she lived, she said, oh my goodness, did you know that the man who lived in the house before you, he committed suicide? And I said, well, I'm not surprised because it was a depressing place for me to live. She said, yes, I was friends with his mother, and she told me how it happened. Well, I was shocked because he did it the exact same way I was going to do it. I had picked up on that imprint because I was in such a low vibration state of mourning and depression and confusion. So now getting back to the more current time of when this happened, the next day I went out for a walk and I thought, wow, what do I want? Who gets offered helpers from angels? I thought, I'm nobody special. Why would they reach out to me? I thought, I don't know, but I'm not going to miss this as an opportunity. Clearly, this is an opportunity. So I thought about what I could want. I thought about all kinds of things that would give me the perception of power. And I went, no, that's not what I need. Money is not what I need. Popularity is not what I need. I don't know what I need, but I was aware that I needed wisdom. I needed a lot of wisdom in my life if I was going to correct my course and be somebody of value to this planet and to be a citizen of the planet and to fit in. I knew I needed wisdom. So I asked for wisdom. And it's a funny thing how it went because I was asked, would you like the quick method or the slow method? I am not kidding you. I know how ridiculous this story sounds, but still, this is my reality. This is what I experienced. So I went and said, oh, I want the quick method because I wanted to get wisdom as soon as possible. And in my mind at that time, I thought they would just pour the wisdom into my life, but it didn't work out that way. I got what I asked for, but I got it in a very interesting way. I got it through life experiences, and I had a lot of life experiences that came up for me in the next little while. And it taught me by overcoming every challenge. It actually did give me a certain measure of wisdom so that I could course correct my life and do things differently. So that's my angel experience. Shortly after that, I was just sitting there wondering where I should go next and what I should do. And I heard a voice, clear as day, say, go down to the Women's Center. Now, the Women's Center is a resource center. It's a place where I was living that they had where women could go, actually men too, and find out what resources were available, what help we needed. Again, those things were still available before the year 2000. So I went down there and I was doing some volunteer work, and I became sort of politically activated. I started seeing the different problems folks were having, why they would need a resource center. I noticed there was a lot of poverty, and poverty is something that isn't spoken about in Canada. It's assumed that it doesn't even exist. And um, there's a lot of stigma attached to low income people, regardless of their circumstances. And by the way, low income also includes two people or one person who's a minimum wage earner. And there's a tremendous amount of folks here who are minimum wage earners. And so one day I was working at the Women's Center, and I got a fax came in where they were offering free training for people who are interested in political activism. And I signed up and I got accepted, and I went and got training. And the organization was called End Legislated Poverty, which is an interesting name because poverty, regardless of where you live in the world, is always legislated. And I went and learned about everything. I learned about what's happening today we knew about back then. There was documents leaked, there was information out there, but nobody believed it. Nobody believed it. And so we just kind of got labeled as nut jobs. But anyway, I went on to create an organization called the Comox Valley Anti-Poverty Social Justice Group. And I had hundreds of people show up to my meetings, and they all had similar problems to me. We didn't have enough money to pay the rent and buy food. We had all kinds of obstacles, and it really kind of blew me away, and I was shocked, and I went, oh my gosh, how am I going to help these people? It's just me, and I don't have money. I can't help them out. What am I going to do? And so what I did was I started a social justice group, and we did everything by the book that we were told to do to create social change. We had letter writing campaigns. We had phone-in campaigns. We had meetings with MLAs and other politicians. We wrote articles. We told people. We talked about it. We did everything we could. And over time, it became quite clear that nothing was changing. So that's how I got into anti-poverty work. That's how I got introduced to social justice, which I continued to work as much as I could with every ounce of energy I had for the next 10 years, even more than that, to try to bring about positive solutions. And unfortunately, I learned a lot, but we were unable to really bring about any changes. So that work led me to an opportunity to get an education. I started out at college and I went on to university, and I got a degree in social work. Now, I didn't specialize in any one field. I became a generalist. So I got to take tons of psychology and sociology and all the fringe courses they offered and all the really interesting nooks and crannies of this program I dug into, and I studied very, very hard because, again, this was one of those wonderful opportunities that doesn't come along every day, and I wanted everything I could get from it. So while I was getting my education, I was still involved in anti-poverty work because they were slowly removing the social workers from all the agencies. And once I graduated in 2004, there was no work for me. They had laid off over 20,000 social workers. So everyone who was then low income and had a need, this is what it looked like. You went down to a public office and you took a number, like if you were at the meat market, and you stood in line. And you stood in line, long, long lineups of people that were there to pay fines or people that were there to get permission to build a shed on their property. All that stuff was just thrown into one person sitting at a computer who looked up the information and gave you a stock bureaucratic answer. And so there was no room for compassion. There was no room for empathy. There was no room to deviate or be creative within the rules that we all had to follow for getting help. And this had a tremendous effect on the low income communities, not just the ones that I was involved in, but for everybody. And this was in British Columbia and has slowly moved out to the rest of Canada. And this is part of that program that we're seeing today. So they've started terraforming our social health system back then. And so then what happened was I noticed a definite criminal takeover in the low income communities. And it just broke my heart to see and to experience. And I'll give you an example. I moved into a little house. It was just a complete dump. Unfortunately, a lot of these people who, and I'm not saying they're all like that, I'm just talking about my experience. And so to go out and find a rental, the prices are very, very high in British Columbia. But not only that, a lot of the landlords were middle income people who were all on this thing where they all wanted to have rentals, and then they could amass their properties, and then they could amass fortunes for themselves from having all these rentals. But the problem was they were not supporting the structures. They weren't doing the home repairs. They weren't doing anything to make the houses even livable. And so we were faced with all kinds of situations, mold, a lot of black mold, a lot of mold, which really has a negative effect on your physical health and your psychology, because it's very damp on the coast in BC where I lived. I knew people who had squishy, wet carpets ongoing. They were always like that. You always had to leave your shoes on because there was a leak somewhere and the landlord just never bothered come to fix it. And yes, there was some government agencies that you could go to for mediation, but those slowly also dried up and generally sided with the landlord. You see, what happens in Canada is you lose status when you lose income. And the lower your income, the lower your status. And what comes along with that is a mindset that you've done something wrong to put you in that position, that you must be a lazy person or a bad person, or maybe you're spending all your money on drugs. Because if you just got with the program and stuck to work and worked hard enough and long enough, you would be like everyone else. But the truth of the matter is, poverty is legislated into the system, and it creates a huge mass of people that are then ripe for scapegoating and for targeting, but also it makes the middle classes feel a little bit superior, like maybe they're doing something right because they got 2 cars and a big house and things like that. But it also shifts the blame from government onto the poor folks. And I'm sure we've seen this all over the world. This is not just happening in Canada. And so I saw the criminal takeover. So I'll give you an example. At one point in my life, I didn't really talk about it, but I had a very badly botched surgery, very badly botched surgery. And it caused me to have brain injury. So I had that on top of everything else. And I couldn't communicate because of all the anesthetic from the surgeries to try to correct the mistaken or the bad surgery that I'd had. I had what they call delirium, and I couldn't make sentences and I couldn't make sense. I could no longer read. I had huge blocks of memory that were gone. I couldn't walk very well because one of my legs was lame from where they had also cut a nerve in my back. I had so many issues, and here to be low income and to have people treat me badly, it was very difficult. So anyway, just getting back to this, I was in a lot of pain and I couldn't take the pharmaceuticals. That's one thing that low income people in Canada get. Tons and tons of prescriptions. They get all the drugs you could possibly want or need, mostly don't need, but that's another story. And so what happened to me is I was in a tremendous amount of pain and I couldn't take the pharmaceuticals, but I was able to get a legal medical exemption that allowed me to have some medical grade cannabis, which was an absolute godsend. So I moved into this horrible little house. My son came from out of town and moved in with me. He was a minimum wage earner, actually less. What they also do in Canada is they get people to hire you as a contract worker. And because you're not an employee, they don't have to pay you any specific wage. They can give you $10 for a whole day's work, and that's legal because that's a contract job. Anyway, so what happened is we moved into this little house. My son was doing contract work. I was out collecting returnables from the dumpsters because it was the only way I could afford food. And one day there's a knock on the door, and this man comes in and he says, I just want you to know that every territory in the city has been divided up between the major gangs, and you're in this gang, and we've heard that you get some medical cannabis. You now have to sell it, and you have to turn the money over to us. And we'll be checking on you. And if you don't comply, you will get what people get when they don't comply. And me, not meaning to be cheeky, I said, well, what would that look like? And they said, well, the last guy that disobeyed us, we kept him in a cage for 3 days with no food and water. So think about it. Well, I was really freaked out, I'll tell you. So my son and I immediately tried to find another place to live. But it's very difficult finding good places to live. I also want to say that because I had had a botched surgery, I couldn't get proper medical care because as soon as the doctor found out that I had had a botched surgery, they pretend that that's not possible. So they pretend that I was the problem, not the surgeon who did the botched surgery. So I don't want to get on that too much. I just want to show you that my life was very, very difficult in those days, but I had asked for it. I said I wanted the quick method, and holy smokes, did I ever learn a lot. So, so anyway, getting back to when I was going to university, this came later. Once I was able to get my education, I found that because of the impairments I had and the challenges I had around poverty and things like that, I found it very, very stressful, and I started to burn out. It took me 5 years to get my degree, and I started burning out about year 3. The other thing that happened was I was misdiagnosed because I was suffering from burnout, and I was misdiagnosed as having a psychiatric issue, which I didn't have. And they sent me to a psychiatrist who started prescribing all these psychotropic drugs to me, which put me in an even worse position. And then in order to graduate, I had to go and get full vaccination. After I got vaccinated, I got brain injury as well. I couldn't think anymore. I had absolutely no impulse control. I couldn't stop talking. I behaved like a child. And my son literally had to babysit me and look after me. And no doctor would believe me, and no doctor would support me. So again, I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for me. I'm trying to show you what life is like amongst the have-nots. And it isn't just here in Canada, it's all over the world. And so this is where I'm going to be coming from in this show regarding my earth politics. Is going to be coming from the perspective of the have-nots and not from the haves. It's kind of a funny thing right now. People are finding out about all the police brutality regarding the restrictions. And there's a wonderful YouTube channel called Rebel News that reports on what's going on in Canada. And there's a tremendous amount of police brutality. But all of us who are low income are watching and going, that's been going on all along. That's not something new here. Police brutality, we face it all the time. And so if you're in a low income category, you're also fodder for police brutality. So now it's hitting the middle classes. So the middle classes are now getting um, um, wrongly arrested and are getting hurt by police without charges, without proper charges, and all these kind of things. And those of us that are low income are watching and going, that's always been like that for us. And I've witnessed it many, many times. So, excuse me. So, anyway, it was in my recovery that I started to make contact with ET. And at first, I thought I was just dreaming. I thought I was making it up because I didn't actually even believe in this stuff at the time. And what happened to me was I would go to sleep at night and I would wake up in the morning with vivid recall of all these adventures I'd been having. I had several different jobs as far as the ETs go. I was an exopolitical ambassador. So they would take me at night while I was sleeping. They would take me in etheric form, not physical body form for that. I would meet with them somewhere out in the galaxy, and I would start to share what it's like to be human, how we think, how we operate, what our emotions are like, all kinds of things, and what our life experience was like. And it was interesting because that information was downloaded into a holographic record keeping system that helped those who are not from Earth, who are certainly more evolved than those on Earth, to understand how to help us, what's the best course of action. And I'll get into a lot more of that later on. You can also visit my website and also my YouTube channel, which I'll give you where to find me towards the end of the show. But yeah, my adventures were amazing. I also had a physical experience, and I got to be a part of a program that I'm going to call the Intergalactic Resettlement Program. And I've spoken quite a bit about my adventures, and they will also be part of upcoming shows. So that's where the exopolitical component comes in. And I got to tell you, after experiencing what life is like in other realms, it's clear that we've got a long way to go as humans. Clear, absolutely clear. So that's where that all comes from. And then from my ET and interdimensional contacts, I received a download. And I got to tell you, this blew my mind because I received the information in a moment, absolutely in a moment. But it so filled up my head, it was like an obsession. It took me 2 years to unpack it and put it into a program that I could then present to humanity. So I knew a couple things. First of all, I needed the program to be put in universal terms. So I wasn't putting one cultural group above another, that it had to be demystified. So I wasn't presenting it in archaic knowledge. I wasn't presenting it in mystified language or religious contexts. It had to be really plain and really simple and really doable. And it had to cover every aspect of being alive, pretty much. Wow, that was a lot to ask. But I got to tell you, again, I asked for it because it was in the creating of the 9 steps to quantum health transformation that I was able to find the right kind of stimulation to start to put my mind back together, make my mind work again. I found out about different foods and detoxification and earthing and different spiritual practices and so many things. So I applied the program to myself before I put it out to other people. And so that's how come I really know it works and how wonderful a program it is. And it's absolutely free. It's over 20 videos of information. And now has never been a better time for people to jump right into it. It's absolutely free and no strings attached. And I'm very, very excited about the work that I was able to put together and literally downstepping information that came from other realms into a very easy to understand, well, pretty much easy to understand, three-dimensional reality training program. So then I ended up with more exopolitical experiences in the galaxy and making contact with all these dimensions. And I thought I was the only one at that time. But I continued with my personal spiritual transformation. And I discovered the roles of health and well-being, finding my own inner guru, my strong connections to my higher self, my spirit guides, and also members of the intergalactic community. And so these are not special experiences that a special kind of person gets. These experiences are available to everybody. And this is the really, really exciting part, folks, that I want you to know. And that is universal consciousness is available to everyone at their present state of consciousness. So you don't have to join a church. You don't have to become vegan. You don't have to be this or that or any other thing. Right now, right here, exactly as you are beautiful, you're loved, and you have so much potential. And as soon as we tap into these other realms, the farther we get to go, because we're just as humans on our own, it's really hard to handle everything. Our shoulders are not that broad. But when we bring in the other kinds of help, and I'm not talking about religion, I'm talking about the spiritual help that's available to everybody, we can all start to make a lot more progress. And then getting back to the personal is political. Every decision we make is political. What we choose to eat is very political, and it affects so many different systems on the earth. How we choose to think is also very political. Every aspect of our life is spiritual and political. And I hope to raise some awareness around that so that we can start to become the change that we want to see in the world, because that's what I'm really trying to do here. And so for spiritual help and guidance, I find there's an abundance in the ET realms, and the ET realms also overlap with the interdimensional realms, and that overlaps with the ultradimensional realms and even the angelic realms. And all of that operates within the love harmonic of the universe. Now, we're also now aware that there isn't just one universe. There's also the multiverse, and then there's the omniverse. And the omniverse includes the universe, the multiverse, and all the spiritual beings that we would classify as spiritual beings that are also available to help us. And that all exists in the same kind of area. I'm not going to say time and space because we're actually quite limited by time and space. And there are many of these beings really are not hindered by time and space. They don't have to conform to that construct because, for one thing, most of them are non-corporeal. Although the ETs that I met were absolutely corporeal. I'll be speaking more to that in future shows. And so my history has prepared me for my work today, and my struggles have made me strong. I have learned so much, and I just have a sincere desire to share what I know with other people. I know it all sounds a little kooky. I know it does, and I'm not asking anyone to believe me. But I would like you to open up your own heart and your own mind and stretch out for something more than what our government is telling us is possible, more than what a lot of our religious instructors are telling us is possible, and certainly more is possible than we thought we could have. And so in the future episodes, I will take a look at the global construct that we live in and how this broken system offers us many opportunities for personal growth and soul development. And this may sound strange, but even though we're under all these restrictions, threat of war, food shortages, on and on and on and on, There are tons of spaces within that where we can have a fuller life, where we can find true love. And love is so much more than just a basic emotion. Love is an action word. Love involves things like mercy and faith and patience and mildness and goodness. Love is so many things, and it can't help but improve everybody's life. It can't help but improve the conditions on this planet. Because when we really love people, we don't do things to hurt them. So, on my next meeting, or I should say my next episode next week, I hope to have Chris Matthew as my guest. And has a platform called Forbidden Knowledge News. And he has so much knowledge from all his guests that he's had over the last 3 years, and he's discovered so much. And recently, Chris had his first paranormal experience. And actually, his guide suggested he reach out to me, and he did. And I was able to coach him through that process, because it's very unsettling when it first happens. And we've become quite good friends and good supports for each other in the process. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you today. Now I have a few minutes left, so what I'm going to do is talk about how we change the world. So we're used to looking at the world from a top-down perspective, but I have found that the different people in power, regardless of whether they're in religion or whether they're in politics, whether they're in, in the educational system, whether they're into the economic system, it matters not. I find, and this is my personal opinion, that those who are in charge seem to be in charge because they lack empathy and they lack compassion. And because of that, they're not operating in a full spectrum of humanity. Because when we lose compassion and empathy, we also lose our ability to love, our ability to create. There are so many things that are lost, and things become very bureaucratic and devoid of human feeling and emotion and all the things that make us human. Unfortunately, those people are at a minimum. Now, the vast majority of us can be compassionate, can have empathy. We can look out for each other, and we can go within for our experts and our guides. You see, an external expert is only as good as the information they've been given. Now, I know there's some very good doctors out there, but there's some really bad doctors out there too. In fact, I don't go see them anymore because all they do is bring out the prescription pad and start writing me prescriptions. Well, that's not how I do business. I do business by healing my mind, my body, and my soul. So although I'm not a perfect work of art, and I don't claim to be, I will give you a little formula. And the formula is to go within and take a look at what we eat, how we think, the company we keep, how we do business. And when we go within and we self-explore ourselves, we see obviously the areas that we need to improve upon. So we become really aware that, maybe we need to eat a little bit better. Oh, maybe that person is not a good influence on us. Whatever. We just start taking steps to improve the self. And nobody knows self better than self. And we start doing that kind of work. Well, then what happens is we start to improve as human beings, and that spreads out to the people that are closest to us. So then we start to repair some of the dysfunctional habits we have on how we interact with each other, and the ways that we deal with other people. And so that starts close to home. And then those relationships improve. And slowly that spreads out to the community. And then it spreads out more and more until the whole earth is full of people who want to do things differently and want to do things in a better way. And so that's my interpretation of the saying, um, heal your planet by healing yourself. Become the change that you want to see in the world. And we need a lot of change. So, although I'm not going to claim my show is going to give you everything you need, not at all. In fact, I'm not going to do the work for you, but I am going to talk about the ways that I was able to do the work and continue to do the work of change. And I'm finding that way more beneficial than all the protests I used to participate in and the letter writing campaigns and all that kind of stuff. Because when I changed myself and continue to change myself, it works like magic. My external reality changes as a result, and things just start getting better and better and better. And so I'm going to bring my take on everything to the table, bring in some guests that have some interesting takes, and it is my hope that you will just glean from it what you want and throw the rest away, because I'm certainly not going to tell anybody to go out and do life the way I do life, because that's not very loving. What's loving is for me to be there and to offer what I can so that each one of you can improve and change your life as much as possible. So I just want to let you know about some of the other things that I'm up to while I have the opportunity here. And if you'd like to enjoy more of my content, I encourage you to check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. I'm a different kind of health coach. I work on an energy principle rather than a physical 3D principle. And on my website, you will find an abundance of free resources to assist with energetic ascension into physical, mental, and spiritual paradise. So from my website, you will find the 9 steps to quantum health transformation, which is a free, no strings attached, comprehensive online lifestyle course, the same one that I follow myself. The Quantum Guide Show. I'm host of the Quantum Guide Show, and you will find interviews with awakened masters, and I encourage you to let them share their quantum work with you. I host another show called Forbidden Transformation with Karen and Chris. That would be Chris Matthew of Forbidden Knowledge News. And on that show, we teach people how to make positive ET contact, how to improve your life, and how to find your experience or community. Oh gosh, I can't tell you how happy I was when I found out I wasn't the only one having these experiences. There are thousands of us. There are millions of us. And for reasons that I'm not going to get into today because of time, we don't remember. We don't remember until the time is right, or we don't remember until we're activated. And so part of my job is to activate other contactees. And it's very, very rewarding work. You will also find the Fringe View. So that is science fiction becoming science fact as you learn about my real life paranormal and extraterrestrial experiences. And if you would like to support my work, please check out my online shop where you will find Zen Dome's Orgonite. That's my unique brand of orgone generators. They're ethically sourced, they're handmade, and they're double charged for maximum for maximum effect. I also have comfort crystals, just a small limited collection of energetically infused semi-precious stones. I offer lifestyle services, which could include workshops, assessments, and certainly one-on-one support and coaching, and also PDF downloads, which are printable, shareable copies of my lessons. And by the way, the Quantum Health Transformation Program is very, very shareable. Please use it any way you see fit. Share it to anyone you think might benefit from it. Use parts of it in your own program. The point is that it needs to get out there and be used because it's basically a living program. So in the next couple of minutes, I just want to remind you of my website, which is www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. You can email me at forbiddentransformation@gmail.com. And of course, you can find me on People for People Radio, www.peopleforpeople.ning.com. And then there's my YouTube channel, which is Karen Holton TV. And the full URL reads www.youtube.com/C/Karen Holton TV. And there's just tons and tons and tons of information on there for everybody. So I don't seem to have any questions from the audience. So I'll just spend the last couple of minutes telling you about what's happening. There is this big lockdown right now, I'm sure all over the world. In Canada, it's getting pretty intense. I personally don't believe it's about sickness. Um, I personally believe this is more about a planetary lockdown and a way that the new world order hopes to become established. And I myself have not been sick for 2 years. Well, actually, a year and a half, I have not been sick. I know of a few people who got flu-like symptoms and they readily got better. I do not know anyone who has died from a COVID. Whoops, I shouldn't have said that. Oh yeah, I can be more relaxed on here because I don't have to worry so much about censorship. Whew. That's hard, being censored all the time. I would say that's the most challenging part of what's going on in this world. But what's happening is people are finding that there's also a lot of opportunities in this lockdown. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying I enjoy it, and I'm not saying that I want it to continue. In fact, quite the opposite. I'd like it to be over as soon as possible. But in the meantime, there is an abundance of opportunity to go within, to think about what you want in life, what's working. And yeah, no censorship, I know. What's working in your life? What's not working in your life? Spend some time looking back at patterns on how things went in your life. What went well? What didn't go very well? There's more time if you live in the luxury environment that even the poor people here have. We have hot water. We have an abundance of hot water. We've got bathtubs, most of us, and it's really lovely to start pampering ourselves physically, start looking at what we're eating, start making homemade meals again, and less relying on takeout. I know we want to keep all these businesses going, but at the same time, it's really, really good for you to cook your own food, develop relationships with your own food. There's so many things we can do. Right now, we can get all kinds of education from all the social media platforms that offer us an abundance of videos and podcasts on how to do everything. You can learn how to be a mechanic for your motorcycle. You can learn how to bake a cake. You can learn how to have a garden. You can learn how different groups of people are responding to the restrictions and have found success. So there's an abundance of help out there. Yeah, it's up to you. You can just watch TV and stay in bed all day if you want, but there's a lot of things we could be doing in the meantime. And so I guess I'm running out of material because this is my very first show, and I don't want to get into anything that's going to take too much time. But I want to tell you too how much I appreciate you being here, because without you being here, I don't have a show. And I've had so much encouragement from people that I've never physically met. I've made such wonderful friends and allies. And I'm very grateful to People for People Radio for giving me the opportunity to come in and share my kooky way of looking at life and my experiences, which are definitely not typical, and bring in some of my friends and share with you all the things that we want to say. I'm very excited, and it'll take me a while to get used to there being no censorship, because I'm so used to operating under that yoke that it's pretty wonderful that I get to talk about whatever I want to talk about and not worry so much about what other people are thinking, or worse yet, having my shows removed. I'm having quite a bad time right now with Facebook, because I now host 3 different shows. I post them to a lot of different groups. So I'm a member of about 25 groups on Facebook, and the moderators tell me, please post on our groups because your messages are encouraging, they're interesting, they're different. And so I start posting the different shows to the different Facebook groups, and every single time now within the last 2 weeks, I'm being restricted and disciplined by Facebook. They're telling me that I'm going against their community standards. I'm quite frustrated with how I can do this um, without always being in trouble. I'm not a naughty child and I'm not doing anything wrong. In fact, their algorithms are screwing up because there are legitimate reasons why people would be banned for disrespecting the community standards. I get that. But a lot of us are doing nothing wrong. We're simply expressing our truths in gentle and loving ways, and there's no need for us to ever have that removed. So that is one challenge I am facing. Chris Matthew of Forbidden Knowledge News, he's constantly having his videos are being removed. He's facing a lot of frustration as well. And so we're all kind of in this together. So I'm very grateful for platforms like this so that we can move over and start sharing our information in a more free method and feeling better about what we do. I want to thank Vanessa for moderating today. And of course, I want to thank Gaz, because without him, we wouldn't have People for People Radio. It's a wonderful, wonderful platform. And I hope that those of you who are not yet signed up, will sign up and start listening to all the shows on this platform. They're wonderful. They're very inspiring. They're positive. They have so much information for everybody. So I really want to encourage you to, if you haven't already, do sign up for People for People Radio. And that's www.peopleforpeople.ning.com. And just thank you again. Very grateful for this opportunity. And I'll see you next week. Hopefully I'll have Chris Matthew with me, and we're going to be talking about predictions and timelines. Although I may possibly change the topic to what's going on in Canada and the United States, because things are really escalating fast. It's not to complain about our situation so much as just to let all of you all over the world know what's going on from the citizens' perspective in Canada and the United States, because you're certainly not going to hear about it on the mainstream. So thank you again. I wish you all a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I send you much love.